Okay, so we are back at Cool Club's headquarters here in Scottsdale, and we are greeted with Dr. Tom Mace, our in-house scientist, and our CEO and founder, Mark Timms. We've had a company belief for a long time, and Mark, talk to us about that,
Sure.
and then maybe expand on where we're headed.
Right. So our company belief forever is, basically it's on my shirt somewhere underneath here, but it's play better golf, right? So we do everything we can to make people play better. And honestly, the best way if you're looking for clubs and equipment is to come in here and get fitted. And it's a 3 or 4 hour process, and it takes a long time, and it's not cheap, and it's hard to get here. So the customers we got, whether they're tour players or 18 handicaps that want help, to go into the whole process is definitely the best thing you can do. But it's not for everybody, and not everybody can get to our locations, and there's lots of different types of fittings out there. Our real goal as a company, our company belief is to help people play better golf. Now, we've known for a long time people buy clubs on the internet and don't have time to go in and get fitted and stuff. And we really want to just help all those people out there with some information on trying to look at all the data we collect and all the experience we have, and our fitters as well, on how can we help them all play better and make it time efficient and cost effective, that they can get clubs or get suggestions from us, who are basically the experts, or my fitters are anyway, on how much clubs they should look at and why.
So traditionally, Pete, people have come here, they book in a session and they spend anywhere from 1 hour FaceTime with a fitter through to 4 hours or even a whole day.
Or even 2.
Right. And at the end of that, we are refining a specification down to the absolute nth degree. And at the back end of that, we're then putting it in the hands of our expert builders, and they are reproducing what the guys have tested to even finer detail. So it's a tour experience as far as you can go.
Yeah, we work with a bunch of tour players, and we really go to the nth degree. We're trying to get within tenths of flexes. So we each flex like a stiff. We have 10 different stiffs and different varieties, and that's great. And that's if you want the perfect clubs, that's fantastic. But that's expensive to do that way, and it takes a long time.
So then outside of that, we've got people remote areas. We've got nowadays people are really time poor. And especially the way the financial world is right now, people are going to be maybe a little more strapped for cash. So, but they're always going to love golf, and we want to hit that market where people can spend less time, spend less money, and still get a really good result. And we're really lucky for 2 things, and one of them sitting here, and the other one's sitting here actually as well. So we've had a long time in the industry of data collection. And the brilliance of your mind and our fitters is, okay, well, we've been collecting all this information for such a long time. It must mean something, and we must be able to provide a service with this. And this is where Dr. Tom Mace comes in. So tell us a little bit about, you've been presented this information, and what can we do with it?
Right. And basically it's like there's all these years. I've known Mark for almost 20 years, and he's been doing great fittings all along, and we want to try to gather that data and say, hey, what are some general groupings that if you fall into this category, this type of swing, what do the expert fitters at Cool Clubs guide you into, and maybe utilize that as a tool for a different kind of fitting, as you're talking about, maybe a online fitting that would use all of the expertise and the past knowledge of Cool Club fittings to get you honed down very quickly to a product that will work for you.
Excellent. So I mean, this is the exciting stuff. This is like all of these great minds, all of this great data, and you've got to piece it all together. So it's kind of fun.
You get the hard job.
Yeah,
I just come up with the
exactly
ideas.
right.
I give them a bunch of data and say, go figure this out for me, right? So
let's talk about a swing, a player profile, for instance.
Well, there are definitely different profiles, and basically where this came from is I've been doing this for years, right? We've got investors or friends or people that can't get to me, and they call me up and say, I play with my buddy, and what club should I get, and should I get the same club? And I've learned how to ask questions to find out how they swing and how to recommend stuff. And we're very good at that. I mean, I think there still needs a person involved, and obviously our fitters have all the experience that they get to hit and play with these things every day. So they know a lot more on top of, recent experience on top of all this data we collect. So I think we could do just a great job. I think there's a lot of questions out there people have on what clubs I should buy. We have those answers, or at least as best answer anybody will have.
Well, let's talk about 2 things you touched on there. So the first thing is you've got really good personally about digging into someone's mind, because they're not standing in front of you, they're not hitting a golf ball. You've got to ask the right questions to feed them into the database for it to produce something. So, that's part one is make our interview process really, really clean, get the right information from the player, and that will produce the good result from the software. And part two is making sure the software holds all that information in the correct way. So what do we put into that software? What's our technology that's driving that? What do we have in-house?
Right. Well, it's just basically all the robot data and all the tribal knowledge and experience and data mining, what we've done, plus the experience of the guy that you're going to talk to, which to start, the first few are going to be me, actually. So that'll be interesting, so I can work through it. But that's really it, because there's a lot of people out there that want information on equipment.
So we've got S3 data from the shafts.
Yeah, we got all the shaft data. So we run everything through our S3 machine, which basically we put a shaft in, and 2 minutes it kicks out 100,000 pieces of data. So we know everything about the shaft, and we know how that relates in fittings because we've got all this experience doing them. So we know what kind of swings fit what shafts.
And we can even look at launch angle.
Sure, yeah. It predicts which launch angle they do and how high and how by degree even. So we have a pretty good idea in the shafts. Obviously in the head part of it, we've got, all the robot testing that Tom does, and we're really detailed in that. We do a majority of our testing at 95 miles an hour, but we also go down to 80 and up to 110. And that's literally thousands. If you look on the screen right here, this is some of the robot data we collect, and this goes on. I mean, I could scroll down here forever. There's literally, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pieces of data. And, that's really useful information. But what do we do with that? So that's Tom's job. He kind of combs through all that stuff and organizes it and gets it to this point, which you can explain what kind of you did there.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, you think about a golfer out there that's saying, hey, I might want to get fit by Cool Clubs. And it's like, of all the years and all the data, there's probably been several people just like him that have been fit by Cool Clubs. And so what we're trying to do is reach back and look at the fittings, build a database that we can filter through and find out. It's like, okay, like players like this person generally went in this direction with products. And so that's building the database and getting it organized so that we can sift through there and find those players that were just like you.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's almost a copy as best as you can go.
Yeah,
and the great thing,
that's exactly what we're doing, really. Just looking at people, similar profiles to you, and how did our fittings come out, and then look at robot data and say, how did these come out on the robot, and kind of match those two things up. I mean, the biggest reason we want to do this to some extent is availability to the general public, right? So, it's expensive to come out here. It's expensive to do fittings. We want to offer something that's going to cost you as little as, you're going to pay as little as you will anywhere. So, basically all clubs are at MAP. Everybody sells clubs for the same price. We're basically going to charge, to start with $50 for an hour to consult with somebody. We're going to go through and ask you a whole bunch of questions, go run through a whole bunch of data and make you some recommendations. And, if you want those clubs, we're going to partner up with our partners, which are Callaway, TaylorMade, and Titleist, and Ping, and give them very specific directions on what to build and send them to you. The reason I say that to some extent is, we're known for building everything and building to the nth degree. But that's not what this is for. This is to get people that want to play golf better, the best clubs they can get from the OEMs at the cheapest price possible. And to be honest, the OEMs, the Callaways of the world have gotten much, much better over the last 10 years since I started this in their custom departments on building the spec. And, if you're stock clubs with, even with specific shafts and just putting them together, we'll check all the specs, obviously, but they do it pretty good. There's no reason to spend an extra $500-600 on a custom shaft unless you actually hit it and it works.
Yeah,
you can get a really good clubs from the OEMs directly. And I just don't think it's over the phone. This process kind of leads itself to building to such an nth degree when you can't actually see the person. So
100%. So
trying to save them money and getting the best clubs they can for the cheapest price.
It's truly value.
Yeah.
It's time value and it's financial value. Just touching on a bit more of like Cool Clubs, because we're an R&D company, we can create our own standards. So we're going to have a shaft playability number across the board for OEM shafts as well as aftermarket shafts. So we're going to have to understand flex across the board, which means that when you're talking to our fitters or you on the phone, you're going to be able to talk in real terms, like this shaft versus this shaft does this or this.
Oh, yeah. We know what every shaft does.
It's not an opinion based from that manufacturer to this manufacturer. We're also going to standardize a Cool Club's length and lie and take into account all of the manufacturer's differences on those two fronts. And once you're using our standard, we'll be able to order the clubs relative to a cool club standard through the OEMs. So you're still going to be getting the right clubs for you, even though it might be a different standard from Callaway and a different standard for TaylorMade. It's our standard. So you can come to us for the one-stop shop of, like, it really is a standard measure within the industry, which a lot of people struggle with out there.
Yeah. People that measure things differently, that's for sure.
Exactly right. So, and once we order those the correct way through the manufacturer and they turn up at your door, you can trust that it's based on the fitting that you had.
Right. I mean, an example for that is, everyone talks about standard lie angle. Standard lie angle, some companies are 62, some are 62.5, some are 61. If you need 61 from one company, you order, 1.5 flat, the other order, 1 degree flat, and the other you order standard. So that's our job. We'll figure out what you are and how to order them correctly from the companies, which is actually not as easy as it sounds.
So we're in a very early software testing and putting together, but give people an idea of, like, just the process that you're going through on the phone. They might not see this, but this is what's happening.
Right. So obviously this is all the robot data we collect, and we obviously look at how forgiving they are for distance, direction, draw bias, and this is kind of how we sort through those parameters. But if you look at actually kind of the nuts and bolts, the easy version of what it is, and I just stuck myself in here to some extent, but I'm a 7 handicap, player profile. I'm a little better driver than other things. Kind of a neutral path, don't draw or fade it a lot. Hit up on it, hit it about 260, which I can get a pretty good ide of there, and I talk to somebody on the phone on how those things are. There's some tricks to figuring those things out. Or if they've got robot, if they've got, launch monitor data, or their teachers got some information, the more stuff you can send us, the better. The more information we know about you, the better job we can do. So, but even if you have none, we can get a pretty good job. So when I plugged all those in, and obviously see if I take out the what the distance is, it's not going to be able to figure this stuff out. So what I've done here is, here's all the profiles and the things we look at. This obviously is narrowed down and combined from the hundreds of thousands of pieces of data we've got before, but our fitter profile rating is, we actually ask the fitters. These are the guys working with the customers day to day. What do they think of this driver versus that driver? Look, feel, sound, who does it fit? And this is specific to this type of golfer, right? So this driver may be a 4 or a 3 or not be very good for a 25 handicap. But for me, that's in that category, that's what that is. Then we look at data mining results. So we actually look through all the people that are similar to me on which drivers they got, and those happen to be the top 3. And obviously one was a little more popular than others, but they're pretty close actually. Then we look at the robot forgiving numbers. This is how forgiving the drivers are.
Touch on that. That's the 9-point test.
Yes, we do a 9-point test. Center is straight, then as you hit around it, how far right and left does it go? And then the other thing we look at too is how much distance do you lose? So it's kind of a combination of all that. You look at that as well. And then obviously there's a robot distance one, which is really ball speed and how fast it's coming off, the potential distance if everything's correct. So if you kind of pile these through, I mean, the kind of stuff I initially wrote here came up with these 3 drivers. And to be honest, an 88 versus 90, I mean, this is a tie, right? So, I mean, they're really close. Technically, right, if Tom we looked at all the data, one would be more forgiving, one's a little longer, but we're talking about small amounts. And I actually have these 3 drivers, and I still don't know which one I like better. So there's not necessarily a wrong answer. And that happens all the time, too.
And you got to think of some of those clientele at that point, you get down to 3 drivers, they might be, I'm a Titleist fan.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
And it's an easy decision.
And it's not a bad decision, right? I mean, all the manufacturers make good clubs these days.
Yeah.
When you get to this point, there's no bad decisions.
Yes.
When you narrow it down, when you clear the forest and come to 3 trees, then you're all set.
Yeah. And this is the exciting thing, is that we can actually do a really good job. You need information, but you don't need to be here any longer. And we've got the master of numbers and the master of club fitting combined, and possibly the future of fitting coming up.
We're doing a pretty good job. Well, as all this technology changes, launch monitors are getting cheaper and stuff. People have access to those things. More information we get, the better. So,
and that's a good thing to put out. So, on our website very soon, we're going to have some sort of access to this material. There's going to be a YouTube experience coming up where we're going to show some of this stuff off. Collect your data. Start to understand your game.
Absolutely.
Get yourself to a point where if you make a phone call, you can give information that gives you the best result.
Yep.
And that's as simple as that.
Hey, and another option too for this, like I said, we're doing hour blocks. We can go through kind of a whole bag in an hour, but it does take an hour. Ask all the questions, understand, what their strengths and weaknesses are in their game or whatever. But think of it as another option too. It's a great second opinion. If you got a doctor, you're going to buy, if you've been to a fitting or your instructor has said you need to buy these, whatever, and you're not sure before you spend $3,000 or something. Use it for that. Obviously you're going to pay the $50. We're not going to be able to reimburse it toward the clubs you're buying, but you got a pretty good idea. We're going to tell you the truth. We'll tell you what we think of the fitting, and if it's close, we're going to tell you that's good.
Well, peace of mind as a golfer is a pretty
it's a
big deal.
thing. $50 to take a double check at it with some knowledge and a whole bunch of data to back it up is not a bad idea either.
Right. Cool. Well, hopefully next time we do this, we've got some real hard software to show some people, and we'll walk through a fitting with them. Have Tom tell us exactly what happened, and have you get some results, and we'll reconvene at that point.
Yep.
That sounds great.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you coming out again. It's
Awesome.
great.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Cheers.